So a very good morning, I bid, to our representatives from BMS, British Malaysian Society, Ms. Mason, the chairperson of the BMS, our esteemed speakers, and our student panelists, and our UKEC tech team today. I'm Joanne, the vice chairperson of UKEC Careers, and I'll be your host today. I'd like to formally welcome you to our event today, which speaks on the in and outs of landing a UK internship. This event is an initiative and collaboration by both BMS and UKEC to garner awareness on UK internship opportunities amongst Malaysian university students. Through this event, we aim to equip students with relevant knowledge on the application process while understanding the recruitment criteria in the UK itself to help them in their pursuit of landing an internship or getting a graduate role. Just a note of housekeeping. If you run into any technical difficulties today, let us know in the chat and we'll be able to help you right away. Also, I would like to address here on how to engage with the speakers and panelists throughout the sessions happening later on. Kindly drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we recommend you to change your audience to all panelists and attendees so that we can all share and interact with each other. Please only use the Q&A box for questions, as we will not be attending questions directed from the chat. That's all for housekeeping. Now I'd like to welcome the chairperson of UKEC, Ismat Qayum, to deliver his opening address. The stage is yours, Ismat.
Thank you, Joanne. Good morning to the participants in the UK, good evening to our fellow participants in Malaysia. For those of you who are familiar with London, I want to give a weather update. It's very gloomy, but fret not, we're not going to allow this to dampen our mood. I want to specifically thank the people at the British Malaysian Society, specifically Ms. Mason, the chairperson, Stephanie and Jiawen, who also been very instrumental in organizing what will be a great event. So I have one thing to really talk about, and it's a difficult conversation, but then again, I'm not very, I don't tend to shy away from these tough conversations. And it's something that was raised to the likes of UKEC. How can we be endorsing an event that seems to be facilitating the brain drain issue? This is an event about securing British UK internships. And doesn't this event contradict UKEC's mandate? For those of you who don't know, one of UKEC's mandate is to tackle the brain drain. And prima facie, this may seem true, this may seem contradictory, but really it isn't. And I ask you to consider this. Why have we bothered to come to the UK? Why have Malaysians bothered to go to the US or Australia? And for me, and I think for most Malaysians, it's for this very reason. We want to learn. We want to take our skills and abilities to the next level. We want to learn a different perspective, a different dimension, a different taste, if you like. And that rationale applies to internships as well. We come to the UK to learn. And when we do take these opportunities around us, when we want to sort of get these UK internships, it's to give that different perspective. And so to those participants among us who might be a bit iffy or a bit concerned that, oh, is this not contributing to the brain drain problem? I say fret not. In fact, this is something that you should be doing. This is something where when you come to the UK, you have to grasp the opportunities around you. And so to our amazing participants, I say this: make the most of the UK, make the most of the surroundings, network, make the most of the UK internships you will get, and most of all, make the most of our distinguished speakers today. And most importantly, don't forget to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ismat, for the inspirational speech. I would like to now introduce our esteemed speaker for today, the highly accomplished and widely experienced Mr. David Stringer Lamar. David has a wide, versatile range of experience spanning from his role as the Managing Director of Fortis Consulting London. He is also the Chairman of the Institute of Directors, IOD, of the London region, which consists of more than 5,000 business leaders and 25,000 members. He is also a core member and committee chairman of the worshipful company of glaziers in the City of London, an ancient livery company. He also stands as a member at the director panel of the Bank of England Institute. David is a frequent participant at conferences, contributing to a wide range of subjects, including transformational change, innovation, entrepreneurship, business development, and the need for effective communication between international business cultures. He has been an active speaker and event moderator in connection with many companies, organizations, and renowned universities as well. Without further ado, let's welcome David for his presentation on skills which recruiters look for in recruiting graduates. Over to you, David.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever you actually prefer. Thank you ever so much. You've clearly read a little bit about me, and you've been kind enough not to mention any of the negative or bad points that I no doubt have. But indeed, thank you to all the organizers that have put such terrific effort into bringing us all here today. It's a great pleasure to be involved. I've got just under 20 minutes. I'm going to get a warning, hopefully, at the 3 minutes to go, then 1, and then I'm going to kick me off at 0, and I'm going to get through all these slides in that particular time. But obviously, we can maybe have some conversations around the questions and answers later, which I'm looking forward to receiving. And as you know, you can upvote them, so the organisers have got a chance of knowing which are the most popular. So as you've heard there, I'm involved with the famous and the very strong British Malaysian Society. And as you may notice, I'm actually wearing the tie that we have here as well. So great that you can all join us on this. And it's always terrific to do these joint events. And indeed, you know, do get involved with the British Malaysian Society, social medias, LinkedIn profiles, website, Facebooks and Twitter, because of course the British Malaysian Society has been around since 1983. And obviously we are very much engaged in culture, education, and indeed business relating to UK and Malaysia. So this is a great topic for me to be involved in, and I thank people very much for it. In terms of the format, I'm going to go on for the next 19 minutes, and then we're going to have my expert and great mate, Edward Holroyd Pierce, to give you the real insight into what's going on in the world of internships. If I may have the next slide, please. So you'll see here's the esteemed chair of the British Malaysian Society, Masim Lai, OBE Deputy Lieutenant, at the student fair that is normally held every year. Obviously this year is slightly different here in London, which is a great way of putting together business people and students, and also it's a great opportunity for myself to engage with business leaders from Malaysia. If I can have the next slide, please. Most kind. So here's just a little bit about me and what I do. So in the introductory comments, Ismat mentioned the whole idea of networking. So networking is very important. Get out there and try and meet some people with different ideas than you have yourself, so you actually learn and you're challenged and you engage with people. I support the comments as well there about not being a brain drain. I prefer to look at international engagement really as interconnectedness and an idea, an opportunity to learn and develop and work together for enhanced and increased opportunities going forward, because as we'll be hearing from me a little bit later, the world is getting smaller, it's getting more interconnected, and now is the time to actually reach out there and take the opportunities where they exist, and take it to the UK, take it to Malaysia, take it to a third country, wherever the path of your life is going to take you. So it's always a good idea to look at what's actually happening. So in this particular short conversation with you, I'm going to look at the UK economy, what's going on, global themes, then I'm going to talk about UK-based companies, and particularly the skills they're looking for, and then hopefully a few top tips, as I would like to call them, about how you might position yourself for them, and then obviously Edward can take those comments forward. Can I go to the next slide, please? So just in terms of the boring educational bit, we were having a conversation earlier about how I kind of ended up where I am. We formed the company Fortis Consulting London back in 2010, but there's a whole different road before it. Law degree, so I was supposed to go and be a barrister, then I was supposed to be a solicitor, didn't like that very much, went back to University of Politics, ended up international relations, worked for a considerable amount of years here in London with respect to further education, engaging with business. Then thought, oh, there's a gap missing really around formal management education, did an MBA, and then actually ended up forming the company in 2010. I mentioned my honorary visiting senior fellow at the business school formally cast, because my great mate you'll be hearing, Ed, has got his MBA from there. So I'd just like to mention the connectedness between people, and do look for connections. Don't look for differences, do look for connections. Right, let's get into the meat of things. On to the next slide, please. How am I doing for time? Okay, got a good 15 minutes. So UK economy, what's going on? So with my perspective here, meet many hundreds of business leaders throughout the year. And obviously we're all looking at what's going on. And these are without doubt exceptional times with COVID. But as you'll see up here at the top, from those of you who are studying economics, you've already got all this stuff. GDP Q2 down nearly 20%. Obviously, one of the, if not the biggest fall really since records began. And then some estimations that it's going to continue until, or sorry, the whole year GDP down between 11 and 14%. But that's not the one I really want to draw your attention to. It's the third line, the Treasury forecast for 2021. You'll see there that's positive 7%. So the whole idea being, yes, things are uncertain at the moment. There's talks about restructurings, layoffs, unemployment, etc. The UK economy is very flexible, it's very innovative, and of course we will adapt to whatever the world throws at us, and business's job is to keep going and get around obstacles rather like water does. So yes, 2021 upbeat there, 7%. Fourth one, something called the Purchasing Managers Index. So if this is below 50, that means it's not very good and people are not buying as much as they used to. These are the kind of corporate buyers, of course, in the supply chains. This is is above 50 at 56.1, unemployment 4.5%. So there's just a little bit of background on things. Next slide, please. Here's just a quick picture of me, the reason I mentioned it. So this was a British Malaysian Society event, but involving the other societies relating to ASEAN, because I want to now look at the international context, in particular the UK. Next slide, please. So these are some of the global themes that business leaders are talking about at the moment. Now, I just put them there for two reasons, as it were. One, to draw your attention to the complexity of the economic system, but also to encourage you to do a bit of research so that you're able to talk about these. So if you are going to go into interviews, if you're going to apply for the internship, it's quite good, it's positive. If you've got some knowledge, I notice I'm saying some, you don't need to be experts in this at all, but at least you've got some idea of some of the key themes. There are many more indeed which are going on. Now, clearly you'll all be aware of COVID-19 and what's occurring there, and creating an enormous amount of dislocation across the world, and obviously increasing the debt that countries are carrying. I also put down the next one, protectionism and globalization. So this is a really interesting and fascinating one for me, and no doubt the people are doing international politics, economics. So we are living in a world, we continue to live in a world of increasing globalization where everything is interconnected. But strangely, at the same time, we seem to be in a world where people are putting up barriers and saying, no, this is my economic domain, this is what I want to do with it. So for me, there's a contradiction in there somewhere, because supply chains are all across the world. Talent is very fluid, and technology is enabling people to cooperate and work together right across the globe. So fascinating area. UK, China, a lot of tensions going on there at the moment, and people are talking about these two great powers, but you'll see there in brackets I put Russia as well. So how does all this impact into the actual trading or the business dynamics, what's going on as well? And digitization, I mean, one of the great benefits surely that has come out of this COVID-19 period is this massive boost it's given to businesses to digitize. And this whole idea, yes, of course, there's physical internships, those will be there, or they'll come back really, but also this massive push into virtual internships. And now, for me, that just makes complete sense, because people are working from home now, they're working from different locations. So I was on a call yesterday with respect to our company with somebody in Bermuda, somebody in Cayman, and then I'm here in London. This is all possible because people said, okay, we now need to do this. So digitization is a great thing, and people are willing and able to do it. Over the last week, I've been very much involved. Last week was the World Space Week. So space technology is really rising up the agenda. And that's obviously all in terms of communication, the satellite systems, all the interconnectivity that's going to bring as well. Art and culture. And we talk about global culture, coming to the next one, Hollywood. We've got a massive rise of local cinema productions in various countries. So culture, again, is actually coming up, the non-homogenized nature. And this whole idea of global brands, yes, we've got that, but people are saying, okay, I've got all the global brands, but what can I get that's a bit more specific to me? And the big one coming through on global themes, of course, is sustainability. And this is, really brought home to me as well, because Maysim and I are very much involved in TV for the environment, and that looks at sustainability. So where are we going to do with the sustainable business models that are occurring? And if you're into finance, what about green finance, which obviously the City of London's very big at here. Can I have the next one, please? So here we'll see it's just a picture with His Excellency, the High Commissioner, Charles Hay, at a British Malaysian Society event. Next one, please. Now, the reason I put this up is because UK companies, the UK government has never really been looking as outward as it is doing at the moment. So it's a really interesting time because, yes, because we've got this thing known as Brexit coming to get us, and therefore we need to look at different ways of working, so not just Europe. So the UK-based companies at the moment are dynamic, means they're constantly changing, and they're innovative because they're playing the global marketplace. This is why we need and encourage global talent, and also they're very innovative because we're a capitalist-based economic system, and therefore we've got to compete on the world stage, and that means we've got to be very good at what we do. You've got that bit there. We just heard the announcement yesterday from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson that there might actually in the end be a hard Brexit and no deal. Obviously we'll wait and see, but either way, UK businesses are looking much more outside the EU. That's a good thing for Malaysia, that's a good thing for other countries. And really these UK companies were looking for a mix of competencies. So it's not just what degree did you do? Are you an expert in law? Are you an expert in politics? Are you an expert in civil engineering? Fine, we've got all that, but what else do you actually have to offer us? So it's looking for a mix. So it's this bit, and I'll come on to it, I suppose, in a few minutes as well, just to remind myself, what do you do in your social life? What do you do when you're not being at your studies or at your desk, etc.? What are these other parts of it? And of course, British companies, very professional services focused. But remember, professional services doesn't mean you've got to be an accountant, you've got to be a lawyer. There's marketing in there, there's HR in there, the facilities management in there, there's so many things. And the bottom one there is tech. It's enormous at the moment in the UK, whether it's medical technology, whether it's legal technology, whatever it might be. If you've got some interest in tech, and again, you don't have to be a techie person to do it, that's a really good growth area. So last week, as I said, was World Space Week that the Institute of Directors was involved in. And it was really illuminating for me because essentially the message coming out was space technology is growing. But what we're looking for are many different disciplines. It's not just about astrophysics. It is about marketing. It is about human resources. It's about cash flow. It's a normal company. It just happens to work in space. So do think about that as a particular area. Next one, please. So here's just a quick picture of myself as part of the British Malaysian Society first ever business delegation to Malaysia, led by Maysim Lai in 2019. And this is the University of Nottingham in Malaysia. Next slide, please. So moving it over here, so skills and you, as it were. So these are the things these are the skills companies are looking for. Now, the reason I put and you, as I mentioned, is as you look at the slide, think about where have you been involved in these particular areas? What have you got in these particular points that I put up on here? Now, it doesn't have to be anything amazing. You don't have to be number one, number two. British companies need lots of different skills at lots of different levels. It's just, have you done something? Have you been involved with a local society? Have you been involved with a faith group? Have you played some sport? Whatever it might be. So up there, very strong team working, Can you work in a team? And now the important bit here, of course, now that could be a virtual team. And there's so much more of that going on. And we've all learned enormously since March about how this works. What's your level of communication skills? And that is, of course, about spoken, written as well, and now virtual. Can you do it in the virtual phase as well as when we go back to face-to-face? Creativity, companies are looking for creativity. And again, this could be engineering, it could be law firms, it could be retail, it could be accountancy firms. Have you got some kind of creative spark? You know, do you paint? Do you play the piano? Do you do something? Do you write poetry? Some of that creative. It doesn't have to be continually 1 + 2 = 3, because British companies are looking at innovation. We've got to be ahead of the game, or try to be as ahead of the game as possible, because if you're not moving forward, of course, you're going backwards. One thing that often companies are looking for is self-starter. Can you be given a task? Here it is. Or do you have to be told what to do? Now, one of the issues that companies are facing, possibly because of lots of feedback given to students in their learning experiences, what they don't want is somebody continually coming back saying, am I doing the right thing? Is this right? Is it wrong? Could you give me instructions? Companies, here it is, go and do it, obviously with appropriate support structures around it. Malaysian students, we heard in the opening as addresses there as well, international mindset. That is a big, big positive, yeah? International mindset. Can you look at the world differently than somebody just sat here in the UK? Do you have cross-cultural engagement skills? Lots of trade now is international. Have you got the ability to deal with people from different cultures? That could be inside the business, or it could be potentially clients. Can you think quickly? And you'll see the last one here. Are you able to challenge other people in a diplomatic and appropriate way? Because we thrive in innovation. Innovation doesn't take place if everybody agrees. So do you have the ability to challenge in an appropriate way? And of course, are you able to be challenged and take it and learn from that? What I speak a lot on, I'm very strong on diversity and inclusion, but I particularly talk about diversity of thought. Diversity of thought drives creativity. It drives the companies as well. Next slide, please. So think about this. What can you offer a company? Because sometimes companies, it's often the interns, the graduates, etc., will be looking at what can the company offer them, but what can you actually offer the company? So do think about how you can do this. So why are you special? Now remember, it doesn't mean you have to be number one. You don't have to be a superstar or blockbuster or whatever. There's jobs for everybody's internships for different positions. But why are you different? It's not the I've got a 2-1 in, I've got a first in. So what? So have hundreds of people. Why are you special? I've got a 2-2. Whatever it is within that, why are you special? Why are you different? Because you all are different. So it's thinking about how you present that information over. And how will you help the organization? So whether it's a large corporate, whether it's a startup growth company, whether it's a mid-tier company, how can you actually help that organization? What do you bring? And you see there those last bits. Think about the non-academic aspects that you can bring to the interview, that you can bring to the application process, but also bring to that organization. So it's not just all about the intellectual capacity. It is about team working, communication, ability to get jobs done, to be on time is a big one for employers, etc. But think about how you can actually make the difference. Okay, next slide, please.
Hi, David. 3 minutes left.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So you see here, UK PLC. So this is what we call the whole of the UK economy, which includes startups, growth companies, those that are on an upward trend, small, medium enterprises, and large corporates. Depend on good, and you'll see I put it in bold there, appropriate talent. Not all companies need the best, not all companies need the worst. It's what fits for that company. And it's bringing together, it's a matching. That's the important interface between the company and you. And that's what UK companies are looking for. And there are roles for all types of people. Forget the stereotypes that someone's got to be super creative, super extrovert in order to get a job in marketing. And then they've got to be super detailed to get a job in auditing. No, there's loads of different varieties in there. So what we talk about often in the UK companies is bring yourself to work. This is why we're big on diversity and inclusion. We don't want people that are all the same, because we can do that, we get the same outcome the whole time. We've got to innovate, we've got to engage. And next slide, please. And so bringing you a bit of Latin, carpe diem, seize the day. If there's an opportunity there, do take it. You'll hopefully learn something positive. You might learn something negative. As I spoke to the other panel members earlier, when I spent my week being a barrister, as it were, I realized that wasn't for me. I took something really positive out of that particular experience. But if there is something there, have a look at it, kind of take that risk. Institute of Directors, City of London branch last week at Mason Lai, very much involved in. We had Lord Stuart Rose, who made the point about taking the risks, and therefore you will get something out of it. Thank you ever so much for listening. I hope it's been of some use to you. And now lined up, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from Edward. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, David, for the insightful presentation. I believe we have all benefited greatly and learned about the UK market demographics from your presentation. Up next, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Edward Holroyd Pierce. Ed is a young entrepreneur passionate about employability. He co-founded CRCC Asia back in 2006, which led to over 10,000 students from the UK, USA, and Australia gaining meaningful and transformational work experience in the Asia region. He has subsequently founded Virtual Internship to deliver online internship opportunities to students and recent graduates, improving their skills and employability in an increasingly digital world. Let us hear about virtual internships from the expert himself. Ed, take it away.
Great. Thanks a lot, Joanne, and thank you very much to BMS for having me here. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan di UK, selamat pagi. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan di Malaysia, selamat malam. 各位来宾，如果在英国的话，那就早上好；在马来西亚那就晚上好。And I'm afraid my Tamil really only extends to Vanakkam, so you'll have to be satisfied with that. So that's a little bit of just greeting out of the way. Let me introduce myself very briefly. I, as Joanne said, founded CRCC Asia. And then a couple of years ago, seeing that not every student could go abroad for an internship, founded virtual internships. And obviously the last few months have been, quite busy for us. And we are really just passionate about trying to improve accessibility of anyone to internships around the world. And it's my pleasure today to share with you a few points. First of all, I'm going to talk about different types of internships. There's actually like a lot of different types of virtual internship experience out there. I'm going to just try and unpack a few of the advantages of a virtual or remote internship right now. I'll have a look at different routes to find internships and give you a few pointers, which I hope will be useful. And then I will take just 2 minutes to go into what we provide as our program so that you can understand it a bit better. And who knows, it might be the one for you. So next slide, please. So types of remote internship. Early on this year, we did this small bit of research, and I hope it's useful. You'll see that all of these three types of internships are often referred to as a virtual internship or a remote internship, whether it's on people's CVs or on people's LinkedIn. And it's quite useful to be able to just differentiate between them. We've got what we call the insight model. This is tending to be used by a lot of large corporates at the moment, and it's really like a simulated or pretend project. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's a great thing to do. I know we have a couple of students who've done it, KPMG internship. I believe they've done like a proper in-person hands-on internship, but KPMG, for example, are running this insight model where you can go onto a website, you can download a task and get familiar with what a KPMG spreadsheet looks like and what it might be like to do that work. Most of these insight internships don't really include like any level of mentorship or any real supervision. They're just a simulated task, but nevertheless, good start. Gig model is for anyone who's familiar with sites like Upwork or Fiverr, where you can basically get a small task done or indeed put yourself forward as a freelancer. Gig internships are also increasingly popular. There's a platform called Parker Dewey in the US, and there are probably a few others elsewhere, where essentially companies are posting projects that they are happy for interns to do. Some of them are even paid, which is great. And the only downsides we would say of that are they are very, very output focused. So whichever company has posted this opportunity is thinking, I want this done really well. And they might not really give you that much helpful feedback or mentorship. It'll be like, you did a good job or you did a bad job. And then the final bubble here, full virtual internship, which is really what our program does and what we believe is the best in terms of win-win scenarios, mutual benefit for all the parties concerned. Typically, these are longer projects, or they could be multiple short projects that are stapled together. There would be, or there should be, plenty of mentoring and feedback during the internship. They should balance the output. So they recognize that a student is coming in somewhat unpolished, not with all of the perfect skills ready to do the internship. So that's why the company is giving some time towards the mentorship and the development of the student. These internships can help companies because of that brand building and talent identification, whereas the other two models maybe fall a little bit short on one or other of the potential outcomes. So I hope that's a useful breakdown, just one to bear in mind when you're inquiring about internships, to be honest. Next slide, please. So obviously, this is a very text-packed slide, which is not best practice, I know, but you can take the slide away with you. If you want to do a quick screenshot now, you're welcome to do that. The main things I wanted to highlight were, the differences between an in-person internship and a remote internship. First of all, there's terminology: remote internship, virtual internship, online internship, telecommuting, teleworking. It's all basically the same thing. There's no real clear differentiator. So it's fine to ask questions. If you're going for an internship or you've been offered one or you're applying, you could just sense check, is this full-time? Is it part-time? Do I need my own equipment? Are you going to provide me any equipment? Do I need some software, etc.? So don't be afraid of asking some of those questions. Typically, as I've said in the previous slide, structured projects work best for virtual internships. Now, the advantage of this is you're not going to be making tea or doing photocopying. I mean, to be honest, most internships don't revolve around that anyway, despite what we all say. But there is a sense that if you're doing an in-person internship, you're going to be present, and supervisors can cut some corners. They can wait until 9 a.m. that morning and they see your face sitting at the desk and they think, oh, I've got to think of a good task for Johnny or whoever to do this morning. And that really isn't possible for a virtual internship. So you should be looking at as much structure as possible and as much planning around those projects. Okay, and then the other thing to highlight is just the use of technology. So Trello, Slack, and Zoom are all really, really important. Next slide, please. So how should you go about finding an internship? Number one would be to go direct. You can find job boards, you can look at specific companies who are advertising internships. And my point here would be recognize that you can use different tactics for large companies versus small companies. Large companies will have a very systemized approach. There'll be deadlines, you'll have to apply with certain materials, etc.
We add 3 minutes left. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. Whereas small companies probably will be a bit more flexible. You may be able to actually do a cold approach and say, hi, this is a speculative application. I hope you don't mind. Here's my CV. I'd love to do a project for you, etc. So just think about your audience when you're applying. The second option is to go through a program. So that would be something like us. There are a few different programs out there. And, I would just recommend check credentials, reviews, ask about what types of company they work with. Normally, you won't be able to confirm the company before you commit to the program. That's certainly the case for us, and I know it's the case for most other intermediaries. but you can get a good sense of what types of internships might be available. On our program, for example, you could specify you want it to be in the UK, and other intermediaries may not offer that specialization. And the final route that many people don't think about is going through your university. I know a lot of UK universities actually do have quite developed internship programs, so take a look at that. We work with Birmingham, for example. This summer, they supported over 100 students by paying bursaries, paying stipends to students doing an unpaid internship. And they paid the program cost of our program as well. So talk to your university, maybe even give us a shout out and tell them they should be working with us. Then you could apply for free, maybe. Whichever route you choose, make sure your CV is great, good spelling, good formatting. Do tailor your cover letter, okay? It takes time, but it really is worth it. Talk about the job description you've seen, talk about the bullet points, etc. And then finally, I would try to make some element of personal approach. If it's a big company, then try and speak to your peers, try and speak to alumni who've got a job in the same company. Just ask them what the process is like, ask them for a bit of advice. If it's a smaller company, then really try and...
1 minute, sorry.
1 minute, okay. Really try and use your personal network. So that's just some advice. Final slide, please, Joanne. So this is our program, basically. If you're interested, you can check out virtualinternships.com. I think the bits that I'd like to highlight are, with our program, you can choose which country or which industry sector. So that allows our placement managers to really focus on what you want to get out of the internship. The other really important thing with my final few seconds is the structure of the internship is really important. Think about the skills. So we use an online skills platform called CareerBridge. And even if you're going on your own, try to think, these are the 8 skills I want to improve. How am I going to go about it? And sense check every week or every 2 weeks whether you've really made that skills improvement. Because the idea is that this internship will allow you to showcase your growth and your expertise when you go for your next job interview. Okay, so that's really all I've got to say. There was so many good points from David and from Mohammed, connections, networking, use them all. And just take this COVID scenario as a chance to really prove and build your resilience and your adaptability. And good luck. Please do get in touch if we can help at all. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ed, for the informative sharing. We have all learned in depth about virtual internships through your channel, and I hope the attendees here could actually better prepare for it in the near future. Next up, let me introduce our wonderful lineup of student panelists who will be sharing with us their unique internship experience and application process, as well as their work and responsibilities as an intern in the UK. Can I have next slide, please? First up, we have Christopher Lin, who is intern in Bank of England as an actuarial summer analyst. From Macquarie Group, we have Joanne from, sorry for my mistake. We have Chris, who's intern in Bank of England as an actuarial summer analyst. From Macquarie Group, we have Joanne from UCL, who has interned in infrastructure technology, and Joshua, who has done asset management in the Macquarie Group as well. Last but not least, we have Ernie, who has obtained a graduate role in KPMG Birmingham. So without further ado, let's invite the panelists to come aboard. Take it away, Chris.
All right, hi everyone. Great to meet you guys. If I could have the next slide, please. So yes, my name is Chris. Today I'm going to be talking about my Bank of England experience, very, very briefly actually. And more importantly is to touch on some CV and cover letter tips. As Edward has mentioned, this is something that's very important. And also I've got a lot of slides to go through. So I think either Arisa or Hoy, who is doing the slides, sorry, if you could just go back one slide. Just be prepared to breeze through the slides. All right, so how this whole entire panel is going to work. I'm going to be talking about CV and cover letter. Later on, Joanne, Josh, and Ernie, each of them are going to touch on either online testing, video interview, or assessment centers, which we think are most relevant for you to secure the role. Yeah, so if you could move on to the next slide. So that's the Bank of England, and if you could pop on to the next one. So yeah, so I'm just going to very, very quickly tell you about my experience in Bank of England. So I was part of the actuary, I was an actuary summer analyst, so part of the general insurance risk specialism team. A lot of the work that I did dealt with risk management, dealt with policy, and dealt with regulation. And it was honestly very, very fun. So a big thing why I really enjoyed it was because it was very impactful. So you could really see the work that you do impacting the wider financial sector. For example, I would give recommendations to my desk and they were actually conveyed to the firms and the firms could actually apply it. So I thought that was quite cool. It was very interesting as well. In particular, my division was very mathsy. So we had to do a lot of risk management stuff. It was a lot of statistics and actuarial science, and it was very fun. So the Bank of England is a really great place to work in if you are interested in that collegial, a bit more relaxed environment, I would say. So the culture there is really excellent with a lot of social mixing. Okay, could we move on to the next slide, please? And the other one. So very quick reminder, your CV should have education, internship, extracurricular, and skills and interests. I trust most of you guys here will know this, so I'm just going to jump straight to the next slide. So your CV should really be simple, clean, and professional. I understand that many Malaysians coming to the UK for the first time, we have really fancy CVs with nice graphics on our face, but I don't think many people in the UK particularly appreciate that. I want you to look at this CV. It's an okay format. It's not the greatest CV, honestly. I think it didn't get me to a lot of places. So feel free to look at it and try to think about it and where did I actually go wrong. You guys could read the slides, but in general, try to ensure that you always start off with an action verb. That's what everyone always says. But in this session, we're going to go deeper than that. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So here, I think is the one thing that you please, like if you forget everything else from my presentation, just remember this. So this is how you should write your bullet points. And this way of writing bullet points was recommended by Google, McKinsey, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and by all the big firms out there. And essentially this way to structure your bullet points really shows them exactly what was the impact of the thing that you did. So first step is to show what you did. Secondly is to show how you did it. And lastly is to show what was the results and try to quantify it if possible. Let's just go through the first example very quickly. So if you look at my example one, that was initially how I wrote my points. So I just analyzed trends in the electronic industry and designed statistical trends to evaluate growth for subsector. It sounds great. It sounds cool. That was exactly what I did. But to make it better, I basically talk about what I did, which is to create index, how I did it, which is to identify and weigh key components, and what was the results? Well, I presented it to the sales team and identified 3 new potential clients. So in this sense, you could really show the impact that you particularly have. One more thing for you guys to really note, sometimes when you guys do certain tasks, you're not too sure how do you quantify the impact, but you can always make your own estimations as long as obviously you're telling the truth and it's justified. For example, if you design a statistical database, you could say, you help your manager find information in 2 minutes. Previously, it would take him 5 minutes. Therefore, there's around 100%-ish increase in efficiency. So something along those lines. Could we move on to the next slide, please? And next one. So nothing much here, but your education is very important. I would say list your grades if it's 2-1 and above, including grades for your modules. And if you have any particular scholarship, list it down here as well. Any particular awards, if you are top in your class, top 10, top 15, list it down here as well. Next slide, please. The other one. Yep. So you guys could read the things on the slide itself. So on the first part is my old CV. The second one is my newer CV. And essentially, I think a few things I really want to point out here. Firstly, my bullet points follow the Google method that I told you earlier. So that was great. And secondly as well, is that I prioritize giving more experiences rather than one single experience with a lot of bullet points. And the reason why that is the case is because if you give more experiences, you're able to tell them that you're not a one-trick pony and that you actually can achieve results in a lot of different places, which I think that's quite important.
Hi, Chris, 3 minutes reminder. Thank you.
Yes, next, please. All right, so skills and interests. The one thing I'll just point out here is I like to narrate my interests. I like to actually give a more narration. I think it gives a bit more flavor to the CV. That's up to you if you want to do it. I don't think it's particularly too important in this particular case. Yeah, so next one and next one after that. So cover letter includes why this firm. For me, I was applying to consulting. So why consulting in this example, and why me, which I'm going to touch on in this particular section. If you could just move on. So yes, getting the basics down. Like Edward mentioned just now, cover letter is extremely important to really tailorize it. And honestly, a good cover letter might not get you to the next stage, but if you submit a really poor one, it really shows the recruiter that you are not particularly interested in the firm. And your cover letter is really not a regurgitation of your CV. It's really for you to showcase your personality and your particular fit for the role, which I think it's your way to tell them that, please hire me, I am going to fit well into your culture. So be well communicated as well. And when you talk about a particular point, try to use a lot of data for it. Next, please. Next as well. So so you could screenshot this slide. Try not to circulate it because a lot of it is actually the CV that I used to apply. So firstly is to really begin with a short introduction. And if you notice my introduction from Bain and from Oliver Wyman, they're both entirely different. And it's very specific exactly to what each of the company talk about, their values, their culture, how what differentiates them. And that's what I try to really bring out. And when you're talking about the company, it's why this company and specifically why this company for you. I think that's much more important. And also think about what makes the company unique, their approach, maybe their sectors that they actually service, definitely their culture. And if you talk to people, really try to name drop, but name drop in a way that is very helpful to your application to show how these people have, say, influenced your decision to apply for the firm or how they have given you a greater insight for the culture. We move on to the next one, please. And after that, so like Edward mentioned just now as well, which is quite relevant to me, it's that you look at the job description and then afterwards you identify key traits that they actually want from you guys. So firstly, if you, this was for OC&C, their strategy consultancy. So essentially what they did was they have a job description, they have a few things they list out. They wanted somebody with experience in consulting, communication, analytical skills, and fit into the entrepreneurial culture, which is exactly the 4 things that I highlighted in my cover letter. Sorry, Joanne, I know it's going to end. I'm going to end soon as well. So that's it. Honestly, I think as long as you really personalize your cover letter and then you follow the bullet point Google format CV that I told you about, you guys are going to do well. And I hope you guys found this useful, and I'm going to pass the floor back to Joanne.
Thank you, Chris, for the wonderful presentation. Next up, I'd like to invite Joanne from UCL, who is intern in Infrastructure Technology at Macquarie Group, to share her insights. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Hello. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Chris. So my name is Joanne. I recently had a virtual internship with Macquarie Group, and I did my internship fully virtually in Malaysia. So I'll touch on a little bit about my own internship experience, and then I'll talk about my entire process to get the internship. So my internship started with Macquarie in June, and then as part of the intern cohort, they made us do some webinars and workshops to try and get us to know each other. Everything was online following UK time. And then personally, I had to do one big project, and the project was run with an agile workflow with my team. And then we had regular meetings Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we like chat, and I regularly had a video call with my manager to discuss things, discuss my progress, but everything was fully online. So that was fine. Time zone wise, because 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. UK time is it's 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Malaysian time. So I spoke with my manager, we adjusted the timing. So my work hours are actually 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Malaysian time, which is not too bad, which is equivalent to 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. UK time. So there is that flexibility that they allow you, because due to COVID, obviously, they can't really control the situation. Yes, so challenges with my internship, it was mainly just the lags and the delays. And also there was a little bit of difficulty trying to, connect with people, because everything's fully online. You don't get to meet people and network with people as you regularly would physically over a drink or face-to-face. But it was still okay. Like they gave us many opportunities and activities to try and make all of us interns mingle around each other, and also like make us interns like meet the people who are in the company, and like they organize little coffee chats for us to like talk to each other. So there was still that networking aspect that they tried to like put in for us. So the application process. For me, I applied via a Insight Day. So I applied for an Insight Day, and then from then on, I got scouted for a summer internship. The application process for me went like that. So after the CV screening stage, I had to do a psychometric online assessment. So I'll be touching on this more strongly. The online assessment, they will have a certain sections. So one of it will be about, what was it, reading and information comprehension. So you read a paragraph and then you have to like analyze the information and like try and compile that and then like, you know, answer some questions about the paragraph that's been given. And then another part that will be mathematical skills. So they'll give you some numbers to run some calculations. So you have to be really quick and you have to do it within a certain time frame. And then lastly would be the logical questions. So these will be like logic-based questions. If you remember, like you do these puzzles, like certain patterns you have to analyze, and then you select the next pattern that like corresponds to whatever that they give you on an image. And then once you pass the psychometric assessment, you'll be invited back for a video interview. If you're doing tech and you're applying for a tech company, you will most likely be able to, not be able, you will be going through a coding challenge. If not, then it'll be a video interview. So the video interview will just give you questions. It could give you coding questions and fundamental questions. It all varies depending on the company you're applying for and the role you're applying for. And then once you finish that stage, you will be invited back for a final round interview, or if not, that's what they call an assessment center. So if you're applying for a tech company, most likely you have another round of coding challenge that will be basically face-to-face. So you have somebody with a whiteboard and they will probably give you a algorithmic challenge. So, and then you have to solve it. And for my final round interview, I had a lot of computer science fundamental questions. So those were the technical aspects of the interview. And then there's also the behavioral questions. So in the final round interview, you also have to, you know, answer questions that are not related to your degree or whatever you're applying for, but it's more based on you trying to showcase yourself and your own personality. And then let's see, for my own personal notes, you must have an interest in what you're applying for. Definitely, if like you say you want to do tech, make sure you actually know how to code, because that's one very key thing. They don't always test you on whether you can code, but when you do get the role that you want, that's when you have to showcase your skill set and you have to be able to work quickly. You have to be able to learn and pick up new things as they go, and you have to be very flexible with what they say, but also don't just like obey everything that they tell you to do. You have to challenge them, because you're there to learn and you're also there to, you know, pick up things. And if you think that your idea is better, make sure you say that, because you're not supposed to be a robot there. And definitely you don't have to imagine yourself that you are at the top of like, you're the best person ever. Not really. Wait, hold on. Let me rephrase that. You don't have to think that you have to know everything to be able to apply for an internship. You really don't. I went in not knowing everything about computer science, obviously. I didn't even know how to do machine learning. Trust me, I don't know how to do that. But when I went there, they told me, do you know how to do this? I said, no, I don't. They were like, don't worry, we expect you to learn. So yes, my 5-week internship was me learning how to, you know, do machine learning, which was very, very bizarre, but it was very fun. And I honestly, it's a lot of learning experience and like really good things that you gain from the internship. And like, as long as you take home something, that'll be very good for you. The job market.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, what?
Yeah, 3 minutes left. Thank you.
3 minutes. Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So I saw some questions about the job market. The job market is large. It depends on which company and like which sector you're into. For tech, if you want to do into finance, there's definitely many opportunities available. I would say you should start looking into it. For tech, there's so many different areas you can go into. You can go into app development. You can go into cybersecurity. And there's also like other analytical and research groups that also have paid opportunities. And make sure you're careful enough to dive into paid opportunities, because there are some that aren't paid and that wouldn't be very worthwhile for you because you put in a lot of effort and you're not getting paid. So be sure to like read through what the requirements are, but definitely job market wise, there's a lot of opportunities for you. So don't worry about it. Tips on the coding challenges, make sure you look into these two websites called HackerRank and LeetCode. Those two will have many, many little questions for you, and that will help you get your brain working, and like it will help you pass the coding challenges if you're worried about that. Those would definitely be helpful. And if you are not a CS background and you're still interested in going into tech, make sure you start picking up a language. That's what I would advise, and go on from there. But if you have any other questions, just like pop into my LinkedIn and I'll try my best to answer you. But I hope that helps. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joanne, for the wonderful presentation. Next up, may I invite Joshua Varughese from University of Warwick to start off his presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. So I don't know how qualified I am to give advice, but I'm qualified to be in many Microsoft Team classes or Zoom classes. I'm going to start it how my lecturer starts it. Who here, so if you go to the bottom, participants, there's a raised hand. Who here is interested in an asset management, IB, client-facing role kind of internship? Let's see if anyone actually does this. Oh, that's one. Cool. So I'm speaking to 2 people, I guess. 3. I'm going to assume there's a lot. So if you're interested in IB, asset management, great. So the advice I'm going to give is largely linked to that, but I'm going to talk about many general things, in particular video interviews. So my session is going to be a bit different because my job here is to basically simulate a video interview. So if you think I'm boring, if you think that there's something I'm not doing right, please feel free to say in the chat box, because my job, if I can't do it right here, I'm probably not the best person to give advice about video interviews. So I'm going to talk about 4 things today. The first is about my experience. The second is what you would do in an asset management IB kind of role. The third is about video interviews, the bulk of my presentation today. And the fourth is some advice I saw from questions that people had. Hopefully it helps, and feel free to pop in more questions at the end as well. On the first, my experiences in the past. So I did 2 internships in asset management. The first was in Malaysia with a public pension fund called QAP. Many people might know QAP as the reason your parents or grandparents gets money every so often in the month now. So what they do is they take money from the public. So when your parents work, so the other branch is called KWSP, you put in a bit of money and then they try to grow that money so that when you retire, you have money to basically spend on things that you want, right? So I was in the private equity department. So they gave money to private equity firms. So private equity firms that often use money to invest in other larger businesses around the world can then get a return of it as well, right? So that was my first year internship. And second year with Joanne, we interned in Macquarie, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But the first section I'm going to talk about is for anyone that's interested in IB and asset management, what is the difference? Because I always talk to people that say, I really, really want to get into IB, but don't know what IB is all about. So the first thing to note is that IB and asset management are 2 sides of like a coin. So an IB is a sell-side firm, and the main thing that IB firms do is connect businesses that want to grow larger to the financial market. And so they bring them to things like IPO, or in a simple way, if the firm wants to get bigger, it tries to put them in a public market. So people like me and you can put money in the public market and make that company grow bigger. It's very simplistic, but hopefully all of you get that sort of analogy. Asset managers use money, like my example of the pension fund, that other people give the asset manager, and that asset manager has to grow it, right? So in Macquarie, what the kind of projects I was working on is purchasing a specific asset like an airport, right? So if you are buying an airport, which all of us use, how do you grow that airport to gain like an additional amount of revenue or an additional amount of return on that investment? And there's other things like equity markets, fixed income, alternative investments. I'm saying a lot of things very quickly. This is a very short summary. If you have any questions, feel free to pop in, or feel free to use all of these connection platform things to reach out and ask any questions you may have as well. So what do you do in an asset management IB role? 3 things, I think. The first is it's very, very Excel based. So you need to ask yourself, the question is, are you someone that can sit in front of an Excel sheet for many hours of the day and just do like fill in cells and do coding and all of these things? If you're not, probably that's not the role for you, because during my internship at home, basically my manager would be like, okay, so please fill in the revenue drivers for today and like compute them. And if you, the problem is if one Excel cell is out, are you the person that's going to like throw their laptop against the wall, which I wanted to do a couple of times, not going to lie, or are you going to be the person that's going to be, okay, let me spend some time thinking about how I can make, how I can alter this to make sure that the final flow is correct. So it's very tedious and analytical, but if you're that type of person, that's probably the role for you. The second thing is it's very outcome driven. So people probably have this understanding that IB, especially IB and asset management to some degree, you're in the office 24 hours in the day, you're sleeping in the office, you're not doing anything other than work, right? Although its hours are long, so I'm not gonna lie, I work long hours. If you want to know how long, probably ask me in private. But then what I'm going to say is that it's very outcome driven. So you're not just there doing nothing, twiddling your thumbs. You have a project like Joanne had, and you're going to try to achieve that project by the end. I'm 4 minutes up, so I'm trying to speed it along. Last thing I'd say about that is it's networking. So I think Emily asked a question in there. So during my internship, I would say it was like 60-70% like Excel financial work and 30% networking. So you talk to people, you attend meetings. And if you're not the type of person that thrives off talking to other people, and this is very crucial because it's not just the Excel work, but when you get to like higher levels in the company, are you someone that's willing to talk to clients? Are you someone that's willing to engage with multiple different stakeholders? If you're not someone that can talk to other people in like a public setting, formally in a way and like professionally, that's also going to be a hindrance for you to move up in the future. And I think that was an advice my manager gave. If you want to move up in such a field, you need to have those people and communication skills. So on that, video interviews. I think Shakir and Haley asked it. Haley specifically asked, why is there such a low percentage moving on forward? It's because it's just feasibly impossible to go through 1,000 different applications. So the video interview is super, super crucial to get this right. 3 pieces of advice here. Again, if I'm speaking too quickly, I'm looking in the chat, feel free to say slow down. The first thing is you need to practice like anything else, right? And I call this style, right? So the way I'm trying to engage all of you here is to, I know, smile. I think these are small, small things, but if I was talking like this the whole time and like I was trying to get you to convince my point, no one will listen. You'll all switch off immediately, right? So it's all about trying to get the person that's going to watch this engaged and trying to say, wow, this is someone I want to have a chat with in the coffee room, that kind of vibe. And I think this is really understated, right? Because your inability to like convince someone means that someone's probably going to switch off your video interview. So be critical of yourself, record yourselves beforehand and ask your friends for specific advice about how you can be better. Right. The second thing is content. Say something that matters. A lot of people know about the STAR technique, but what I really want to pick up here is you need to tell not just what you did, but the processes and which of how you accomplished it, because those processes, those thinking and explaining how you solve the issue stage by stage is exactly the kind of skills you'll need to put in the work. Right. So if you're someone that, for example, works in a society and at this issue, right, how did you resolve that conflict? Because that's probably a similar conflict that might happen in the workplace. Right. So it really does help to explain that specific element of how you completed that challenge. Right. And the last thing I'd say about the content element is really sell yourself. I think someone asked the question, how do you be special? Right. I think Malaysians, we have this thing that we're a bit paise. Yeah? We don't want to like share our like experiences because we think we're not good enough. I think like that is the first hurdle you need to cross in a video interview, because if you're not willing to sell yourself, then why would anyone want to buy you, right? If you're investment joke, I'm going to move on. The last thing I want to say about video interviews is that in the minute you have to prepare, so often you have a minute to prepare yourself and come up with a frame and structure. Many people like don't maximize this by coming up with the larger structure. So they plan the first 30 seconds of their time, and my housemates do this as well. They're probably listening next door. They come up with the first 30 seconds and they stop. Come up with a broader structure that you can talk about and like just fill in the gaps manually, because it's far easier for flow than coming up with like really good 30 seconds and like nothing else for the last 3 minutes. I have 40 seconds left, so I'm going to give 3 pieces of general advice. The first thing is try a wide variety of things. So although I did asset management, I did KPMG tech in inside there in first year, and then a McKinsey spring week as well, inside it, whatever it's called, right? So I knew I liked asset management, but I wanted to know that I liked it across other things. So feel free to try different things as well. Second thing is don't be scared to not get what you want. I think Vic asked a question when you should apply. Apply now and apply as many as you can, so you're not like scared by rejection, because you become used to it and you become almost desensitized, but you become efficient throughout the whole process. The last thing is, where can I find opportunities? Things like Bright Network and CRCC, like Ed's company as well, are good companies, good platforms to use. And the last thing is, like, Google the companies that you're interested in. If you're investment management, it's Schroders or Fidelity, and then see their programs as well. I think that's 8 minutes. I'm not sure if that's 8 minutes for Joanne. Yep, so that's me. Like I said, this is the structure of a video interview, getting across the whole time, saying as much as you can, being engaging, and hopefully this made a big difference for you, and feel free to ask questions later. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joshua, for the wonderful presentation and also answering the questions in the chat. Next up, I'd like to invite Ernie Lin from University of Warwick as well, who's done an audit summer internship at KPMG Birmingham. Ernie, please.
Hi, everyone. So I'm a bit nervous today, I have to admit, but it's okay. I'll try my best to impart as much advice as I can. So a very big disclaimer before I start, though, I didn't actually go through the internship with KPMG Birmingham. I did get the offer, but the internship actually got cancelled due to COVID, but no worries because they actually offered a graduate role instead. So I'm very grateful for KPMG for doing that. And I just want to slow down the pace a bit of this whole session actually, because a lot of people have been sharing very technical things with you today. And I think I just want to come here and share my own story with you guys and how I went on my own application journey. So I actually started out not wanting to apply to the UK, actually, as funny as that sounds. I was very comfortable going back to Malaysia, starting my career there and being with family and friends because I really do love Malaysia and I do wish to go back. But ultimately, everyone around me was applying, and I thought to myself, well, I wanted to see how far I could push myself or what I could achieve for myself. Yeah. So then I told myself, you know what, I'm gonna start applying to 4 to 6 companies, and if that doesn't work out, then it's all right. I can just go back to Malaysia and find an internship there. So undertaking the whole internship process was honestly quite scary. It's a very big undertaking. So I'm sure you hear a lot of stories from even our panelists just now, how in-depth the process can really get and how complex. So I can really understand if you feel that you are not good enough for the role, or you're not good enough, then you're not better than everyone else. But really, you have to stop thinking about what you don't have and start thinking about what you do actually have. And you have to capitalize on what you can offer to the firms. So I can understand if you're feeling scared and overwhelmed, but it's okay. Everyone goes through the same process, and it's really fine to feel the way that you do. So I started my application process applying to the Big Four. So I know this sounds a bit nerdy, but I'm quite a big accounting geek. I really like the subject, and I'm very interested with the issues surrounding accounting and audit. So it was quite blatant to me that I should just start applying for the Big Four. And if I don't get any of the Big Four internships, I will apply to the mid-tier firms, so BDO and Grant Thornton. So I started very early, and I think there was a question about when you should start applying. For audit specifically, start as soon as possible, because it really makes a difference if you apply early as compared to when everyone else starts coming in the late months of October and November, where applications really start building up for companies, and they'll the reply speed by companies is significantly slower, I think. So I actually started applying in August and September. So I think EY and I think PwC were the first to open. So and I think audit summer internship applications actually open a lot earlier than every other department. So you can really just, if you plan on exploring that, you can really just focus on the audit applications then. And I think there was also a question about why the success rate is so low with Big Four firms and what the secret is to that. And honestly speaking, if we knew the secret, I think everyone would be very successful in applying, but unfortunately we don't. So I applied for all 4 at the same time, and I actually got rejected by 3. So, and it was very early on in the first 2 stages. So rejection hurts, I know. But honestly, after a while, you sort of understand that it's not really that it's not because you're not good enough. It's really just because that firm isn't for you. So you shouldn't beat yourself down too much just because you got a rejection. So just keep at it and keep the positive spirits up. Yeah.
Hi, Annie. Thank you.
Oh, okay, sure, thanks. So I would say the very big part of getting through the application process is seeing whether your values line up with the company's. So I'm actually, because I quite like accounting, I'm also very big on integrity, and I personally like to be a very reliable person. So those are like one or two values which really go hand in hand with audit. And so I took that and I capitalized on that during my whole internship process. And I wanted to, my application process. And I just want to touch on my assessment center actually. So my assessment center is personally very simple compared to other firms. It consisted of a group exercise, a personal interview, and numerical testing. So those were the only three things we had to do on the day. One of the bigger aspects of the assessment center that you can really show how prominent you are is actually the group exercise, where you work together in with other 3 to 4 people, and you work on a case study together. So my case study was about helping smaller companies with sustainability efforts, actually. So I think David mentioned sustainability in his presentation as well. And that is one of the examples of how firms integrate big themes in the world right now into their assessment process. And the key here really is to build on each other's strengths and comments and suggestions. So I know people who go into assessment centers thinking they're just in competition with everyone. It's not really the case. I feel that to take the extreme, if no one in the assessment center is good, they'll just not take anyone. And if everyone is good, they'll try their best to accommodate. But the thing here is not to be okay. Sorry. Okay, I'll just like really just it's all right. So you really just have to think of the assessment center as a learning process, I would say, because ultimately you're there to learn, you're there to explore yourself and the company as well, whether you qualify for what they are looking for. So I would really want to say more about the assessment center, but since I have not much time left, but ultimately, I think my best piece of advice would be to be yourself, because I know a lot of people who think they should change certain aspects of themselves just to fit a certain mold that they think the company would want. Don't do that. Never change like the crucial aspects of yourself that you think you can bring to the table, because even though you don't think that it's of much value, other people will see it if you are genuine about it and you're sincere about it. So I think that's all I have for today. I know that was a bit frantic, but over to you, Joanne.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Annie, and all the panelists for their presentation and sharing. I'm guessing all the attendees have a lot of questions now. So moving on to our next agenda, we are opening up to the floor to ask any questions you may have for both our expert speakers and also our student panelists. I'd like to remind the attendees again to kindly drop your questions in the Q&A chat box. So our UKEC chairperson, Ismat, will now take the floor as the moderator for the Q&A session. Over to you, Ismat.
Thank you very much, Joanne. And I think I speak on behalf of all the participants, but the speakers so far have been absolutely amazing. And I myself have learned a lot from their insights. What I'd like to ask all the speakers is perhaps can you all turn on your videos, because I'm sure the participants would love to see your faces when you answer these very, very difficult questions that we have. So I'm going to start off with a question that I think actually everyone can answer here and give a bit of insight. I would remind the participants to perhaps, the speakers to perhaps keep the answers short and concise. We have a lot of questions that we want to get through, and so it would be really helpful if you can do that. So the question that I want to start off with is actually something that Josh actually mentioned in his little speech. It's how do you approach networking in a genuine and meaningful way? How and when do you reach out to a senior that you're not close to? Perhaps, David, you can start us off. We haven't heard from you in a while, and I kind of miss your voice.
Very kind on 2 counts. Well, networking, I think, is essential, and it's all about a two-way street. So often it's said, you must give and not take. What I would say is you must be prepared to give and obviously request assistance that way around. And it's also this old adage that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and the same applies in virtual as well. Do ask about the other people, what they're doing, hear about them, show some real interest in what they're having to say to you, because that way you will absorb and you will get information. Because normally if you're going to ask closed questions, of course, that's all you're going to get. So I think networking is essential, and part of that, and I've been really impressed by our speakers, so well done, is actually quickly being able to communicate what you do, and if you want, what you're hoping to achieve. So make sure your profiles are fine. So if you're using LinkedIn, etc., just get some things on there. And the speakers have been quite right here. You don't have to be brilliant at everything. Just put some little details up on there. If you do want to reach out to a senior, as you put it, see if there's an intermediary step, and you can actually get an introduction to that person. And the other bit, if you can't do that, and you do just send them off an email and they don't answer or whatever, it's just the way it is. And I think the last speaker talked about rejection. Rejection happens, but networking, very important, and do it friendlily, and you'll build up a great network, and they will become advocates for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Do any of the other speakers want to chime in here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something here as well, which I kind of hope that somebody told me when I was year 1 or year 2. But building up on what David said, it's very important for you to build a relationship when you're talking on with the person in particular. But the other thing I think is an option as well is to actually try to get a referral from them. So what I mean by this, for example, is not to be very explicit. You first need to build the relationship. You need to first show that you are a qualified candidate, either through your LinkedIn or through your networking skills. And at the end, if it does go well, there is always the possibility of them actually referring you to a position. And that did happen to me for one of the banking firms that I applied for, which then did kind of pass me through to the stages just because you do have a referral. So I would say do bear that in mind. Obviously, handle this with tech is a bit sensitive. I would say you can't just go around asking for referrals within like 1 minute when you're talking to a senior staffer. But nonetheless, that is an option. So that could be something you guys do bear in mind with.
Yeah, I'd love to add.
Hi.
Oh,
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You sure? Okay. I mean, it's really just to add to what David and Christopher said. I think it's important to think it through in advance before you make an approach, and to have a couple of key questions. It's no good approaching someone and expecting a referral or expecting like some advice like, how do I get a job there? You need to really think like, what do you want to know? What do you want to know about like their day-to-day? What are their colleagues like? Which was the scariest part of the application process? Just try and boil it down into some genuine questions that interest you. And that genuineness as per the question asked is what's going to show through. So just be genuine.
Yeah, I totally agree on that actually. So I think with networking, I don't actually like to call it networking, to be honest. I try to frame it in a way that I'm just really trying to get to know this person. It doesn't have like any commercial connotations to it or anything like that. So I think with Emily, even with just seniors, right, you should never think that you are being bothersome, because that will greatly hinder how well you can communicate to these people. So really try to bring the other person down to your level. I know you could like be talking to like a managing director or anything like that, but honestly, when it comes down to it, they're really just people just like you. So you should never overthink networking. Just think of it as trying to get to know someone, or even trying to make a new friend. Yeah.
Brilliant. Josh or Joanne, do you want to give some final advice on this?
Joe, do you want to go first?
Right. In my personal experience, I don't like networking because like I have to start talking to people, and I'm an introvert, so I don't like talking to people like that I don't know. But when you get the opportunity to meet someone, I think the main thing, one like really strong thing that made me go up to people is that I want to know your opinion on what you do, and like because I have my own ambitions, I want to know how like you can, what was your process. You want to know about the person, you want to know about like their thoughts, their experiences, their personal like view on things, so you can ask them anything regarding like the topic that you're interested in, and I'm pretty sure they'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you, because that's why they're standing there for. Yeah, and definitely have some questions in mind. Like you want to ask them something, and make sure you're interested in the topic so you can keep that topic going. Because if the topic dies down, it's kind of awkward, and then you're just going to be a bit quiet about that. But yeah, Joshua?
I think the best advice I got about this was, imagine someone was asking you for advice. Would you shrug them off? And I think that's the thing that most people often forget, which is, although someone might have an internship, might be a managing director, a lot of them are, like Joanne said, interested, but also have had people in the past that have helped them out. And people are, I would like to believe, have some altruism in them. And so if they see someone passionate about something that they're doing, plus the fact that they know that they've been helped in the past, I'm sure they'll be interested. If it's seniors, especially in your university, a lot of them have been built up by other people giving them advice. So I think it was Emily's question. Feel free to ask people around. I'm sure someone will always be there to help you out.
Brilliant. I think we've covered all the bases there. That was very sound advice from all the distinguished speakers. So the most popular question that we have here is, what are the opportunities for students based in Malaysia to join a virtual internship from the UK companies? Perhaps I can direct this first to Edward, and if any other speaker wants to chime in later, please feel free to. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So it's obviously going to vary from company to company about what their policies are and what type of internship it is. So you will need to, I think, first of all, look at what your targets are and what you're hoping to achieve, and then start to dive deeper into specifics about the companies. But I would say work on the basis of, this is going to be open to me. If you are a student who's been in the UK but is now back in Malaysia because of COVID, or because it's a university holiday, whatever, you're still applying as someone from a UK university background. And while some companies may have a specific policy that says, this is only open for people on UK soil, I'd say that's going to be the minority, and the majority should say, yeah, we understand the situation is different for everybody. As long as you can deal with the time difference, as I think Joanne told us, then you can join the program. So don't let it put you off. Just go for it, dig a bit deeper and check what's available. Again, I don't want to make this a big sales thing, but Virtual Internships has plenty of virtual internships available if you want to join a program.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Edward. Do any of the speakers want to impart some advice on this?
Yeah, if I can just come in there, as ever, Edward's the expert in this particular area. But in terms of COVID being here now, it has really drastically positively changed the mindsets of British, UK-based companies. So if they are able to engage with an appropriate virtual intern in another country, not an issue at all. I remember it's this bit, and also Edward made the great point there. UK-based education, the fact that the students back in Malaysia, they've got that card. It's there, so it's kind of get on with it. I really do think the landscape has changed and has changed permanently in terms of, I imagine, Edward will have a view on this, but I imagine virtual internships are probably here to stay and stay for quite a long time. I don't imagine we're all going to suddenly rush back to physical internships. We're going to move into this different area. So now's the time. It's get on with it, apply if it fits. And UK companies are open for appropriate talent for their organizations. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. I think let's move on to the next question, which I feel everyone can also give an answer to. This is particularly directed to David. Shakir goes, "Hi, David. When you're recruiting, what makes one candidate stand out, and how to best position yourself during interviews and assessment centers?" I think, yeah, if every speaker could give a single piece of advice here, that would be really good for our participants. Thanks.
Great, yeah, thanks very much. I'm going to pick out what one of the speakers said about, I'm writing it down here, what, how, and results. So obviously when we're looking to bring in a new person to our company, it'll be what have they got to offer to us? Have they researched what we do as a company? And have they positioned themselves and the information they provide to answer or display those characteristics? What have they done? How have they done it? And the results? And then position it in a way to say, this is what we can offer your company. And therefore, please have a look. And then building onto it, and then we'll have a look and see if they do have those connections. And in fact, if they've got the communications, and it was mentioned there, and that's very important at the senior levels we work with, you know, can they get along with people? So they've got the technical bits, but also have they got the soft skills? That's what we look for. Thank you.
Sure, I can jump in next if that's all right.
Go for it,
my advice would be attention to detail with regards to the application process and the company that you are applying for. I still see so many applications and cover letters where people haven't really understood what they're applying for or just haven't done enough background research. So for me, that is when a candidate sets themselves apart, when they're either in an interview or even as early as cover letter stage, when they can tell you something interesting that they've seen on your website or about what your company does or about a project. That is when I think, oh, they put in the time, they understand what we're doing, they deserve a seat at this interview, and now let's dig into whether their personality is a match, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, that would be the important one.
Awesome. Maybe Chris, you can go next.
Yeah, sure. So I could give some advice that is quite relevant exactly to how you should conduct yourself in the assessment center. Not say how you should, but maybe some tips that you could consider. So firstly, it's really to strike the balance between being a team player and being a leader. So when you are in assessment center, you're not there to dominate of the other candidates. You're really there to collaborate and work in the team. And there are three ways you can really do this. Firstly is to always include the quieter person. So then if you're in a team discussion and you notice somebody's not talking, just every now and then be like, hi, so-and-so, what are your thoughts? I think including them, I think that really shines in a recruiter's eyes. Secondly, one tip is to be the timekeeper, which is something that I personally like to do, just because it always gives you the avenue to speak out and it always allows you to summarize everything that they're saying and then to jump in with some direction, some of your opinions. And lastly is to be as organized as possible. Often in group sessions, it gets very, very messy, very, very quickly. Everybody jumps in a lot of questions. So if you are the timekeeper, you always have the opportunity to try to introduce structure to the team, and that might look a bit good from a recruiter's point of view. So those are the three things that I would ask you guys to consider.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Maybe Josh, you could go next as well.
Yeah, sure. I think the advice links to a bit about what I talked about just now, which is to find what makes you special, your story, and that is applicable all the way up from your cover letter all the way to your assessment center, right? So like surprisingly for me, when I go for interviews, the bulk or like assessment centers, the bulk of what people talk about isn't necessarily like the finance. Sorry if there's roadworks on the side, not necessarily the finance, but they'll ask me about like my debating experience or this other experience that is unique to me, right? So the first thing is to really, really sell yourself and what makes you different from another candidate, right? Because everyone will have a decent, if you're in assessment center stage, everyone will have a decent cover letter, decent CV, and decent finance knowledge if you're doing financial or consulting or whatever it is. But what's different about you? And that different factor will get you far in that kind of process. So yeah, really do sell yourself.
Okay, unfortunately, we're really pressed for time, but if I can just summarize what Josh said, I think that unique perspective is really important and really pressing on that, because at the end of the day, we all have different abilities and skill sets that do make us different. And on that note, for the people who have asked very, very good questions and weren't able to get them answered in this Q&A session, we will make sure to note them down and answer them in a later time. And for that, I'd like to thank all our speakers and pass it back to Joanne. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Ismat, our speakers and panelists for their inputs. I'm sure that all our attendees are, really benefited from this session. And also for the questions later, like what Ismat said, we'll note it down and also release to our attendees, maybe on our social media or through your email. Okay. I also like to thank our audience for your active engagement, putting all the good questions in. And should you have any questions for our speakers or panelists, feel free to approach them via their LinkedIn, or I think they will be more than happy to address your queries. With that being said, we are coming to our last agenda for the day. Without further ado, let's welcome Ms. Mason, the chairperson of British Malaysian Society, for our closing speech. Ms. Mason, the floor is yours.
Joanne, thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. I think this has been a brilliant session. I've really enjoyed listening to both David and also Ed, and also the hearing about the interesting experiences of Christopher, Joanne, Joshua, and Nee. To be sort of realistic, I think we all have to consider the job landscape at the moment. It is forecast that there will be 3 million unemployed in the UK by the end of this year. And I know that when we did an education session in Kuala Lumpur, when I led a delegation there in 2019, it was mentioned that there are 600,000 unemployed graduates in Malaysia. And I think with COVID-19, that is going to increase. And the problem is going to increase not just in Malaysia, but here and everywhere. So we all accept that it's going to be really competitive. And I think that the tips and the useful advice that both the presenters and also the members of UKEC who have shared their experiences on internships would be very, very useful because you've got to make sure that you've got the skills, you've got to sort of identify what other skills and training you need, what networking you need, and you need to be sort of flexible in your approach. So a SWOT analysis of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what else you need to do, a plan for the next few years, 5 years, 10 years, as to which direction you need to go and what sort of additional qualifications you may need. I think all that is very much needed. I wish you sort of all the best and good luck. I think today's session has fitted in very nicely after the Smart Networking for Career Success that we had just earlier this week. And then, as you know, on the 19th of November, Joanne has organized the next session, which is all about employability. And you get a chance to hear from employers what they're actually looking for when they recruit. So sort of watch out for that. As far as sort of other coming events are concerned, you've seen that on the slide. So we've got a 5G event coming up, which is very exciting. We've got a Diwali celebration. I think I've mentioned the one about employability. And then a culture event with the Sarawak Association, our sister organization. And then also we're having an event on ASEAN with the ASEAN ambassadors. And both the Vietnamese and the Brunei ambassadors will be the keynote speakers. So do connect with us. Do consider joining BMS. We are totally committed with working and helping with Malaysian students here because it's very much part of our giving back and our CSR. So I think you can see on there all the links that you can look up to sign up with BMS and also to look up our events. So I think to end, may I thank Joanne very much indeed, and also her team, and also Ismat, and other members of the Zoom team for putting this on, and also not to forget Stephanie, who's been absolutely key in working on this and working with the students to make this happen. So thank you all, and thank you also to David and Ed for the fantastic presentations. So I wish you good luck and look forward to seeing you at the next BMS event. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mason, for the wonderful speech. And also, before we end, I would just like to extend our warmest gratitude to our speakers and panelists who have agreed to be part of this event. And before you leave, I would like you to do me a kind favor. I would like to hear your constructive feedback for our event today. Please kindly scan the QR code shown on the slide, or you could also refer to the link that's currently posted on the chat. We greatly appreciate your feedback, as this will help us to improve and guide us to curate more events that are beneficial to you all. Once again, thank you everyone for coming, and we appreciate your active engagement throughout. Should you be interested to participate or collaborate with us in our future events, please feel free to reach out to any of us and getting in touch with UKEC or BMS. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you again in future events.